Congratulations once again, dear autocrat. You have already mastered the most demanding population on Earth. Your own. Their television hums obediently. Their newspapers whisper the approved doubts, and their algorithms glow warmly with patriotic reassurance. But power, like empire, is a restless creature. It does not respect borders. And so inevitably, your gaze drifts outward, toward those irritating democracies where elections are still competitive, journalists still ask questions, and citizens persist in foolishly believing that facts count more than your lies and propaganda. Welcome to the elegant necessity of foreign influence operations. After all, you are not planning to roll tanks through every democratic capital. Tanks are expensive, sanctions are inconvenient, and invasions tend to disrupt international conferences. The reason is simpler and far more strategic. Democracies are contagious. Their mere existence undermines your legitimacy. A functioning democracy across the border is not a threat because of what it does, but because of what it proves, that people can live decently without you. Foreign influence operations, therefore, are not aggression. They are prophylaxis. You are not attacking democracies. You are vaccinating your regime against alternative realities. Let us intrude upon their small, orderly lives and destroy their sense of superiority over your glorious, in fact, somewhat backward and narrow-minded, but we'll show you how to hide that autocracy. The first principle you must internalize is this. Democracies cannot be conquered by persuasion. Persuasion assumes a shared truth environment. Democracies are built on trust. Trust in elections, institutions, shared facts, and accompanying fiction that disagreement still belongs to the same moral universe. Your task is not to replace their system. That would provoke resistance. Your task is to dissolve trust quietly, patiently, until the system collapses under the weight of its own doubts. This is why modern foreign influence operations are not about promoting your ideology. They are about eroding theirs. Begin by infiltrating democratic narratives. Democracies tell themselves flattering stories. Fairness, accountability, progress, representation. Do not contradict these myths directly. That would be crude. Instead, contaminate them gently. Elevate every inconsistency. Resurface every historical sin. Highlight procedural failures with obsessive enthusiasm. Frame democracy not as flawed, but fraudulent. Not imperfect, but rigged. When citizens begin to suspect that the system itself is lying, you no longer need to convince them of anything. Suspicion does the work for you. In the United States, this technique reached artistic maturity with the endless repetition of rigged elections, deep state, and fake news. Note the brilliance. No evidence required. The accusation alone plants the doubt. Once planted, doubt does not require watering. Now comes your most important export, division as a service. You polarize identities. Democracies fracture most efficiently when political disagreement mutates into identity warfare. Encourage citizens to see themselves not as opponents within a shared system, but as incompatible tribes locked in existential struggle. In the American context, this meant amplifying every latent cultural fault line. Urban versus rural, college-educated versus real Americans, white versus non-white, Christian versus secular, coastal elites versus heartland patriots. Each group must feel threatened, not merely opposed. Immigration becomes invasion. Social justice becomes annihilation. Public health becomes tyranny. Every issue must imply extinction. Facts live in the cortex. Power lives in the amygdala. Let your messaging trigger fear, rage, humiliation, and pride, never reflection. In U.S. election cycles, foreign-linked accounts master this by promoting emotionally charged content on both extremes. Police brutality videos to inflame anger on the left, crime panic, and cultural decay narratives to inflame fear on the right. When planning your operation, you can happily refer to textbook examples, like that of Russia's intervention in the American information space during the 2016 election cycle. You will note the elegance, no single narrative, no ideological export, only customized outrage. To white conservative audiences, a Russian state institution called Internet Research Agency, IRA, seated in St. Petersburg, pushed messages of dispossession and cultural siege. Posts warned that your country is being taken from you, that immigrants and minorities were replacing real Americans, that Black Lives Matter was a violent movement protected by corrupt elites, and that liberal cities were lawless zones where traditional values had already collapsed. The emotional payload was fear and resentment, the sense that demographic change was an existential threat. Simultaneously, to black audiences, the messaging flipped completely. Russian-linked pages posed as African-American activists, relentlessly highlighting police violence, historical injustice, mass incarceration, and voter suppression. They pushed the narrative that participation was futile, that elections were rigged, that both parties, Democrats and Republicans, were racist, that voting only legitimized an irredeemably hostile system. The emotional payload here was not fear, but despair and anger, the sense that the system was beyond repair. Behold the craftsmanship. White voters were encouraged to turn out in anger. Black voters were encouraged to stay home in disgust. No contradiction existed, because the audiences never saw each other's feeds. And these kind of operations are not even costly. Russia's entire 2016 social media campaign reportedly relied on only a few thousand coordinated troll and bot accounts. On Facebook alone, roughly 470 inauthentic pages, and profiles generated around 80,000 posts, which were seen by an estimated 126 million Americans. On Twitter, investigators later identified several thousand IR-linked accounts, amplified by tens of thousands of automated bots. The paid advertising budget was almost laughably small, around $100,000 in Facebook ads spread over 2 years. That sum would barely cover a single week of legitimate campaign advertising. Even when accounting for troll salaries, infrastructure, and content production, the entire operation likely cost a few $1,000,000 at most. Pocket change by geopolitical standards. The real force multiplier was not money, bots, or foreign reach. It was Americans themselves. Once seated, the most incendiary content was shared, retweeted, and reposted organically by real users, friends, neighbors, co-workers, lending it legitimacy and exponentially expanding its reach. In many cases, Russian accounts did not even need to push messages aggressively. Emotionally resonant posts were picked up by domestic influencers and spread through entirely authentic social networks. Algorithms merely finish the job. The platform does not ask who benefits. It only asks who clicks. Radicalization outsourced. The lesson is brutal in its simplicity. A small number of foreign actors can ignite divisions at scale. This is not persuasion. This is sorting. And once identities harden, compromise becomes treason. When emotion governs perception, elections stop being civic rituals and become existential battles. Losing is no longer acceptable. Winning is no longer enough. Destruction of the enemy will become the goal. Social media, my dear autocrat, is the best that could happen to you. It makes your life and your dreams of harming democracies delightfully easy. When inconvenient truths emerge, never deny them cleanly. Denial invites investigation. Instead, multiply explanations. When reports of foreign interference surfaced in the U.S., the response ecosystem exploded with alternatives. It didn't happen. It happened, but everyone does it. It happened, but it helped the other side. It happened, but the media is worse. It happened, but it's actually good. Each explanation contradicted the last. Perfect. Confusion is cheaper than credibility. This is a fire hose of falsehood. High volume, multi-channel, rapid, and indifferent to consistency. The goal is not belief, it's exhaustion. When citizens give up on knowing what is true, they retreat into identity. And identity, once activated, does not negotiate. Now target the core ritual, the election itself. You do not need to change votes. You need to change how votes are perceived. Encourage preemptive doubt. Suggest fraud before ballots are cast. Frame any loss as theft. Frame any win as narrow and illegitimate. In the U.S., this strategy reached its logical conclusion when millions were primed to reject outcomes they disliked, culminating in January 6th. Notice the success. Even failed coups can succeed psychologically. A significant portion of the population no longer trusts elections at all. A democracy that cannot produce accepted losers is already dying. Finally, introduce epistemic nihilism. Promote the idea that everyone lies, that truth is subjective, that both sides are the same. This is devastating to democracies, which rely on good faith disagreement. When everything is corrupt, nothing is worth defending. Participation declines. Extremes dominate. Moderates disengage. The system remains intact in form, but hollow in substance. Over time, all of these strategies produce democratic fatigue. The result is democratic self-sabotage. Citizens grow exhausted by conflict, cynical about institutions, and suspicious of participation. Turnout drops. Extremes thrive. Governance becomes impossible. Democracies begin to cannibalize themselves. Emergency powers expand. Trust erodes further. Every crisis feels existential. Every compromise feels treasonous. You, dear autocrat, need only sit back and watch the theater of chaos unfold. Your triumph is subtle. You did not conquer territory. You conquered belief. When democracies stop believing themselves, they stop defending themselves. They fragment inward, suspicious and exhausted. And when they finally look up, your system no longer appears monstrous, merely efficient. This is a final irony. Foreign influence operations do not make autocracy attractive. They make democracy unbearable. However, your strategic payoff goes beyond rigged elections, incited populations, and manufactured distrust. Foreign influence operations do not merely distort domestic debates. They fracture democratic alignment itself. Polarized societies struggle to agree on everything that might harm you: a decisive foreign policy, sanctions, military aid, or collective defense. Every external threat turns into an internal culture war. Support for allies becomes partisan. Intelligence warnings become political accusations. Your glorious autocracy will benefit doubly. You weaken your adversaries internally while ensuring that they respond slowly, inconsistently, and without unity to your little impertinences. You do not need to defeat democracies militarily or economically. You only need to ensure they never fully agree with themselves. And that, dear autocrat, is how you will win over one's superior systems without firing even one shot.